Pawn shop finds can often be a hit or a miss. There are hundreds of historical relics on display, from family heirlooms to historic discoveries turned over by a lucky few. For Randy Guijarro, this gut feeling led to the ultimate payoff. Nobody ever expects to stumble across a fortune in their everyday life, certainly not from an item bought on a whim. When Randy walked into a Fresno pawn shop on a seemingly ordinary day in 2010, he had no idea what was in store for him. In 2010, a man named Randy Guijarro came across an antique shop. He decided to take a look around, rummaging through collectibles and timeless pieces to find something appealing and affordable for himself. Randy wasn't the type to be too compelled by antiques that were begging to be sold. He wanted something unique, something that he could store in his home that could tell a story. As he rifled through the more discarded items in the aisles, there wasn't anything that really called his name at first. Once he was done with the furniture, decorations, and accessories, he decided to spend a bit of time with the photographs in the shop. He continued to flip through the photographs. Then, he paused on one, feeling a wave of nostalgia come over him almost immediately. Though he had never seen this picture before, it was almost as if he had known the men staring back at him. He couldn't help but wonder, was this person somebody from his family? Perhaps from a past life? Storing the photo in one of his hands, he kept sorting through the other pictures, trying to see if there were any others like the one he had chosen. Sure enough, he found two more of the same caliber. The photographs had the appearance of being a set, with the same amount of age and wear around the edges. At first, Randy didn't think that the pictures had much value. He had settled on them because of his own personal preference. We all worry that buyer's remorse will nag us once we leave the store with our purchases, especially if we are spending our last few spare dollars on the items. With no immediate intent to sell or redistribute the photos in any way, Randy had to decide whether this collection was worth the money. Upon leaving, Randy had wondered to himself if he had made the best decision. Maybe he should have saved those dollars for something bigger, maybe something that was more obviously valuable. Then, he thought of the way his wife, Linda, would light up the photos, and that restored his confidence. He happily headed home to reveal his new treasure to his beloved. From the tintype, Randy knew that the pictures had to be from the 1800s or so. Although he couldn't decipher much else on his own, he wasn't worried. His wife Linda was always a great help, and perhaps she would be able to figure out the other details of the photograph with him. Randy and Linda immediately dove into their research to figure out who the two men were in the picture Randy was most enamored by. Now in 2010, information access was not nearly as wide in range as it is now, so it wasn't an easy feat. But they were determined to figure out it. This picture meant something significant, and it deserved to have a lot of effort devoted to it. The picture left Randy and his wife scratching their heads for a while. What was so important about these two men playing a game of croquet? After a while, it became clear that at least one of the people presented had to have been a very important figure. Since the background was clearly on American soil, all they had to do was sort through prominent historical figures of the 19th century that fit the physical description they'd narrowed from the photos. However, they couldn't do it alone and resorted to the help of professional historians. With the help of various experts and loads of independent research, Randy and Linda were able to assure themselves that their original thoughts were true. This photograph was indeed from the 19th century and did, in fact, take place in America. This made them immensely happy. After sorting through various American icons during the 19th century, there seemed to be only one figure that truly fit the bill. Randy and Linda couldn't believe it. Who could it possibly be? The pinnacle of their efforts was right before them. Born in 1859, the man in the photo that Randy had connected with was a notorious criminal, famous for his gang-related activity and string of murders committed at a young age. He was feared, revered, and wholly elusive to the public. Though rumor has it this man was shot and killed at 21, there are not a lot of people who believe this report. So is it clear who this infamous man is yet? The man in the photo was none other than Billy the Kid, who went by a slew of aliases such as Henry McCarty and William Booney. Billy the Kid was not depicted in photographs often, and there was only one other picture of him to compare this one to. Randy had hit the mother lode. This was a once-in-a-lifetime find. People had been trying to find evidence of Billy the Kid for decades, and even those with more collecting experience than Randy were not able to track down such an artifact. After a long year of trying to decide whether this was really Billy the Kid or perhaps another historical figure, they approached the final verification steps of their journey. Though these efforts were important to Randy and Linda, it is also worth talking about who Billy the Kid was and why he ended up being such a notorious aspect of the 19th century. Normally, influential figures are regarded as such because of the positive benefits they bring to society. Why was a criminal garnering this much attention? Make no mistake about it, Billy the Kid was no hero. He was a highly wanted outlaw with a kill streak beginning at the young age of 17. By 21, it was said he had killed nearly 20 or more people, although the number is often disputed. Without parents, Billy the Kid was faced with criminal activity for as long as he could remember. He was first imprisoned at 16 for stealing, and his reputation for theft and physical harm had followed him until this very end. At the time, there was almost nobody who didn't know his name and reputation. As any young boy would with limited options, Billy the Kid was immersed into a life of crime straight from childhood. He stole from people in stores whenever possible, but it wasn't just for sport. Since he did not have anyone to care for him, he did everything he could to survive, and that included things like stealing the occasional meal. He evaded the authorities and moved like a ghost, and since there was hardly any record of him, many speculated whether his existence was some sort of myth. Since information regarding Billy the Kid was scarce, he ended up with the nickname Phantom Cowboy. Nobody knew exact information about his everyday whereabouts or even the specifics of what he looked like, so Randy's thrift shop findings were especially amazing. He was a wild spirit who could not be tamed, and many things about him separated him from other cowboys at the time. Beyond his accomplishments in the crime world, Billy the Kid did not come off as your traditional outlaw, and therefore, people found his personality rather intriguing. He had the demeanor of older, more experienced cowboys, even though he barely looked the part. It was what made him such a trending topic. Randy and Linda felt proud of their persistence and were fascinated by all the facts they were learning about Billy the Kid's life. They had heard about the young man in passing, but they never knew the extent of his life until they had spent the last year delving into the photograph's history. It didn't take long for the couple to get the final confirmation they had been waiting over a year for. Billy the Kid was the man in the picture. They were relieved and overjoyed. All the work they had put into proving their theory was not in vain. There had never been another photograph of Billy the Kid with his gang, the regulators, and it was Randy who had unearthed it. Before Randy's discovery, there was only one picture of Billy the Kid recorded. It had been such a long time since any news about him had surfaced, and people were beginning to believe that there wasn't going to be much else we could know about him. His new evidence of his existence wasn't the only thing that made the photos so spectacular. The Regulators, a band of outlaws put together by businessman John Tunstall, were most famous for avenging their boss's death when he was murdered in a standoff between the group of bandits and another crew called the House. Thought it was acknowledged that Billy the Kid was a large part of this group. This photo was the first bit of proof that rumors of his involvement were true. When news sources and the general public became aware that a brand new photo of Billy the Kid had emerged, Randy and Linda experienced a flurry of outreach. In no time, they were a viral hit and were even interviewed by National Geographic, who put together a special about the photo Randy had found. The couple was in awe that Randy's hobby had turned their lives upside down. We are also lucky enough to know the context of the picture too. Randy and his wife were able to score a $5 million payout for the picture, a perfect way for Billy the Kid to pay back his past debt.